You know what's interesting about highly intelligent people? They rarely look the way we expect them to. We often imagine someone with a very high IQ as obviously brilliant, constantly speaking, solving complex problems out loud, or showing off knowledge. But in reality, intelligence often looks much quieter, much subtler. For example, an analytical brain rarely turns off. It replays conversations, decisions, and possibilities over and over again, sometimes long after they've already passed. Small interactions get examined from multiple angles. Different outcomes get simulated. Words get reconsidered. Even moments that seemed insignificant at the time can come back replayed in a slightly different way, as if the mind is trying to squeeze out every possible meaning. From the outside, this can look like overthinking, like hesitation, like indecision. It can even be misunderstood as insecurity or lack of confidence. But internally, something very different is happening. It's a brain running multiple mental models at once, testing patterns, exploring possibilities, trying to understand not just what happened, but what could have happened and what might happen next. It's not confusion, it's depth operating at full speed. And then there's something even more unexpected, a strong sense of humor, because humor isn't simple. To understand or create it, the brain has to recognize patterns, break expectations, and connect ideas that don't normally belong together. It has to hold a structure in mind and then disrupt it in just the right way. It has to see what's predictable and then twist it. That kind of thinking requires cognitive flexibility. It requires speed. It requires abstraction. It also requires awareness of context, timing, and subtle shifts in meaning. So these traits, overanalyzing small things or having a sharp sense of humor, they don't always look like intelligence, but they're both signs of it. And if you've ever noticed yourself doing this, replaying small moments, catching patterns others miss, or finding connections that don't seem obvious at first, you're not alone. Sometimes, the things we think are flaws are actually signals of how our mind works. If that feels familiar, leave a like, and maybe even share in the comments what your mind tends to overanalyze the most. You might be surprised how many people relate to it, and this points to something important. Psychology research suggests that intelligence is less about what you know and more about how your brain processes the world. It's not just stored knowledge, but the way information is interpreted, connected, and reshaped over time. And that processing tends to show up in everyday habits. Here are 10 surprisingly common ones. The first is spending a lot of time alone. Highly intelligent people are often comfortable with solitude, not because they dislike others, but because their brains are constantly active. There's always something to think about, something to connect, something to question. Even in silence, the mind stays engaged. And solitude gives the mind space to do that without interruption. It allows deeper thinking, longer chains of reasoning, more complex internal conversations. It gives ideas time to fully develop instead of being cut short. Some research even suggests that highly intelligent individuals feel less satisfied with frequent social interaction, simply because their cognitive needs are different. Their brains crave quiet. The second habit is constant curiosity. People with high intelligence tend to ask questions about almost everything, not just big philosophical ones, but small, everyday things. Why did that person react that way? Why is this system designed like that? Why does this pattern keep repeating? Their brain is always scanning for structure, always trying to connect cause and effect, looking for what's underneath the surface. Curiosity becomes automatic. It's not forced. It's not performative. It's just how they move through the world. The third habit is talking to themselves. This might sound strange at first, but psychologists call it self-directed speech. And it's actually a powerful cognitive tool. Talking to yourself helps organize thoughts. It improves focus. It strengthens working memory. It allows abstract ideas to become clearer and more concrete. It's like thinking out loud, but with intention. Instead of ideas staying scattered, they get structured, clarified, reinforced. So when you see someone quietly narrating their own thinking, it's not random. It's a sign of an active internal system trying to make sense of complexity. The fourth habit is being comfortable saying, I don't know. Highly intelligent people tend to understand the limits of their knowledge. They're aware of how much they don't know, which makes them less likely to pretend that they do. In psychology, this is often contrasted with the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with less knowledge overestimate their understanding. But people with higher intelligence often do the opposite. They recognize complexity. They see nuance. And because of that, they're more careful with certainty. Saying I don't know isn't weakness. It's accuracy. The fifth habit is changing their minds when presented with new evidence. For many people, beliefs become part of identity. So changing your mind feels like losing something. But highly intelligent individuals tend to treat beliefs differently. They see them as models, temporary frameworks used to understand reality. And when new information appears, the model updates. Not because they're unsure, but because they're adaptable. This ability is known as cognitive flexibility, and it's one of the strongest indicators of advanced problem solving. Now consider this for a moment. How often do we misinterpret these behaviors? Someone who spends time alone may seem antisocial. Someone who asks too many questions may seem difficult. Someone who changes their mind may seem inconsistent. But sometimes, these are not flaws, they're signs of deeper processing. And that processing doesn't just show up in behavior. It shows up in when the mind is most active. The sixth habit is late night thinking. Many highly intelligent individuals report being more mentally active at night. When the world gets quieter, distractions fade, and the brain finally has space to wonder, to connect ideas, to reflect, to explore. Some researchers suggest this may be linked to cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt to non-traditional patterns, including sleep schedules. It's not about being nocturnal. It's about when the mind feels most free. The seventh habit is observing more than speaking. In conversations, highly intelligent people don't always respond immediately. Instead, they watch. They listen. They pay attention to tone, timing, body language, and subtle shifts in emotion. They gather information before reacting. And when they do respond, it's often more measured, more precise. This reflects strong pattern recognition, not just in logic, but in social behavior. The eighth habit is a constant search for meaning. High intelligence often comes with increased awareness, not just of systems, but of life itself. People, relationships, decisions, all start to feel layered. And that leads to deeper questions. Why do people behave the way they do? What actually matters? What is all of this building toward? It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a quiet question in the background, but it doesn't go away. The ninth habit is emotional complexity. Highly intelligent individuals often experience emotions in a more layered way. They don't just feel something. They examine it. They ask where it came from. They try to understand why it exists. And sometimes this creates tension because the same mind that seeks clarity also creates more questions. But it also builds something valuable, deeper empathy, a stronger understanding of others, and a more nuanced view of human behavior. The 10th habit is the ability to hold contradictions. Most people want clear answers, simple categories, right or wrong, good or bad. But highly intelligent people are often more comfortable with ambiguity. They can hold two opposing ideas at once and still function. They can see both sides of an argument. They can recognize that multiple perspectives can be true at the same time. This doesn't make things easier, but it makes their understanding more complete. And maybe that's the most interesting part of intelligence. It's not always visible. It doesn't always look impressive, and it doesn't always make life simpler, but it changes how you experience everything. Because at its core, intelligence isn't just about solving problems. It's about seeing patterns, questioning assumptions, and constantly trying to understand the strange, complex system that is human behavior. So the next time you notice yourself overthinking a small detail, or catching a connection others missed, or quietly observing instead of speaking, don't dismiss it too quickly. You might not be overthinking. You might just be thinking differently. And if this way of thinking feels familiar, if it feels like something you've been trying to understand about yourself for a long time, there's a lot more to explore. Consider subscribing if you want to keep exploring these patterns slowly and clearly without the noise. And that difference is where intelligence really begins.